Hey everyone, today I would like to give you the 5 tips on how to improve your reading comprehension from the expert. Tip number 1, never read a book without a pen in your hand.
So if you have a pen in your hand, no matter what you're reading, you have the opportunity to underline, highlight. Personally, I like to scribble, circle, argue with the author. If you read in the columns of my book, sometimes I'll write, "Boy, that's a great point," or "You're a blooming idiot," or whatever. But I really interact with the author as I write in books. And some people, I know it makes their skin crawl to just think of writing in a book. But if you want to improve your reading comprehension, the very first thing that I would do is take Benjamin Franklin's advice and never read a book without a pen in your hand.
Tip number 2, get the bigger picture.
Whole paragraph or a whole section before you go to highlight or underline something. I know sometimes I kind of get ahead of myself and I'll be reading through a book, and most of the kinds of books that I read are not they're not novels, they're not fiction books, and so they're a little bit more technical or oriented for study. So sometimes we will begin reading, and the very first line that you see that's interesting, you'll want to highlight that. And what I found is if you read the entire paragraph first, a lot of times there may be a summary statement, or there may be a little better information for you to highlight down in the paragraph rather than just breaking up your train of thought. So you may want to read a whole section first and then go back and find what you want to highlight, and I think that'll help with some reading comprehension.
Tip number 3, read out loud.
Another thing that I do, in fact I do it a lot, is I read out loud. And if you read out loud, you will read more slowly than if you read silently. But there are times where by reading out loud, by reading with inflection, you're able to have more senses engaged in what you're reading. So you're not just seeing it, but you're also hearing what you're reading, and that simply helps with reading comprehension as well.
Tip number 4, read silently with quick check marks.
Read with a pencil, read with a pen, and simply check. As you see something that stands out, you see something interesting, simply put a little check in the margin, and that way you can keep reading. This gives you the big picture of a book, and then you can go back through and look and pay attention later to some of the things that you checked. But that will help improve your comprehension.
Tip number 5, explanation.
This next one, I think, is something a lot of people just don't do. And when you're reading to study, when you're reading and it's something that you really want to comprehend, it's not just enjoyment. Something that I do often, in fact, it probably makes me look pretty silly for somebody looking in my office, or maybe if I'm driving down the road, but if I read something, I'll stop at the end of the paragraph or at the end of the section, and I'll think through it in my mind, and sometimes I'll even talk through it out loud as if I'm explaining what I've read to someone. If you can formulate your thinking enough to be able to communicate that to someone else, then it's just going to increase your comprehension. And if you do that throughout the book, if you do that throughout your study, it's going to help significantly.